Okay, we'll begin now. We're going to review some of the points in Hilchas Taaruvot concerning that which is Maluach towards the end of Siman Kuf Hey. And we'll finish the last few seifim where we left off. But just to review some of the nekudas, not going through every shach and taz, even though there's quite a few questions in the yunim issues here, just to bring out the main points. Something that is very salty can cause problems. Even though this is reviewed in Hilchos Melicha and partially also in Hilchos Basar v'chalav, here it concerns Isur v'heter, not necessarily Basar v'chalav. And we explained that Melicha, when something is very salty, whether it's very salty to preserve, or whether it's very salty because we're extracting blood from the piece of meat, and therefore it is completely enveloped with salt in order to draw out the blood, that piece of chicken or meat or fish or cheese becomes roteach, it becomes somewhat hot. It's a different form of heat. It's not the heat of bishul, of cooking, but it's similar, the Gemara says, to the heat of tzli, of roasting. Roasting is heat without liquid. And even though there's no liquid involved, there is a transfer of flavors, right, between one piece of meat and the other piece of meat that is adjoining to it. And because of that, there is a problem of the tam being nivla, the flavor, tam ki isur. We know that the flavor, that which is taref, or that which is asur, is also just as asur as the real isur. So the transfer is emitted from the isur and is absorbed into the kasher, into the heter, even though it may only be absorbed kedei tila or kedei klipa. In other words, it makes a difference how much of the piece of meat is going to become asur now. Can I just cut away a piece, or do I have to throw away the whole thing?
But how could you do something you can't see at all?
Yeah, but we know that where it adjoins and where it's touching, that's as far as it will penetrate.
Two pieces of kosher and the other one is not kosher?
Yeah, somehow by mistake, people were salting them together. In Hot Melicha, you want to draw out the blood, you want to cook a piece of chicken. Before you cook it, you've had to remove the veins, you've had to remove the chelev, the forbidden fats, right. And you also have to draw out the blood that's inside. A kosher hot dog does not taste the same as a non-kosher hot dog. The non-kosher hot dog still has blood. And even a goy will tell you that. So anyway, so you need to salt it. And the salt, after 18 minutes or 30 minutes or so, if you did a good job salting, it will draw out the blood. And you want to make sure that you salt it in a place where the blood will drain. So it should not be seen in its own blood. So anyway, once you've drawn out the blood, all you need is a good recipe, and you're ready to cook the piece of meat.
If you get actually a little bit of the tray, so for sure tray.
Right. So anyway, there's a problem that sometimes mistakes happen. It could be in the kitchen, it could be the slaughterhouse, it could be the catering place, whatever, at the hotel. That's where you have to have hashgacha, right, to make sure that there's no problem occurring. So in the halachot that we're learning, right, we concern ourselves with all kinds of scenarios that surface that require a resolution. What is the halacha if this happens, right? So if you know the halacha, good. If you don't know, you can look it up. And sometimes it's not so easy because it's not black and white. So you need to ask a rav, a posek, that is familiar with these halachot, that can somehow analyze the situation and tell you what's the best resolution. So here, towards the end of Siman Kuf Hey, we're not dealing with mixtures of isur v'heter that got mixed up. We're talking about contact. And we already spoke about the contact of tzli. We spoke about the various other forms of contact of kli rishon and kli sheni, where heat's involved. And since there's no rotev, no sauce, no liquid involved, so the penetration of the isur into the heter goes only so far. Either kedei klipa or kedei tila. And sometimes it goes to b'chdei shishim. Shishim means that it penetrated so much that the only way that you could make the heter, piece of meat that's kosher, mutar, is it's large enough, 60 times against the isur. Once you say it's 60 times larger, then you have enough to dilute or to cancel out the tam or the isur itself. And of course, whenever we talk about in the Taaruvot that one cancels the other, and therefore the isur is batel, that's only when the isur is not be'in and not nikar. If you can identify the isur, if you see it, obviously the isur remains isur. The only time we say something is batel is when we don't see it. Nevertheless, we have to account for the time that it was mavliya.
Even after you remove. Even after you remove the
Even after you remove the Isur, you still have to account for the time that it left behind, and we don't know how much time it left behind. And so we have to think of the worst case scenario, and therefore we say Shishi. Okay, so without going back and forth to the various other halachot of tam that involves kapela, if you have a cook, a non-Jewish cook, to taste, there are situations where you can rely on a goy tasting it without having to deal with numbers or measuring. But we're not going back to that right now. Here I just want to go ahead and review the main points of Melicha. That we said the Melicha is roteach ketzli. It's similar, not exactly the same, but similar to the reticha, to the heat that is emitted by roasting, and therefore it penetrates so much. It penetrates somehow. There's a machloket, rishonim, how much it penetrates. It would depend on, of course, the scenario. If it's two pieces of meat that are both lean, one of them is fatty, both of them are fatty. Is the salt covering just the isur? Is the salt covering the heter? Which one is being salted? Are they both being salted together? It makes a difference. And Ilan brought up the question as to what difference does it make if they're both being salted versus just the isur being salted. Both being salted, it produces heat all over the place. And even though we said that meliach, the heat of meliach is only strong enough to be mavli'ah into something else, not to be maflit of something else, not to take out, not to draw out, as opposed to bishul, where you can, everything happens. In bishul, in a pot that's cooking, everything is moving around. Nonetheless, when the two are meliach, it's stronger than if only one is meliach. Why? First of all, there's a shita. We have to keep in mind all times that the most lenient shita in Hilchot Melicha, Isur v'Heter, is that Melicha can only go as far as klipa. Regardless, even shamen, even if the meat is fat, there is a shita, the Rabbi, the Ramban also holds pretty much like that, that Melicha is not so strong like Bishul or not even like Tzli, even though we said it's similar to Tzli. It's not exactly like Tzli, because by Tzli we were strict. We said you need netilah. Netilah is a thicker layer of meat than a klipa is. Have you seen something called filo dough? Right? Batsek alim, we call it in here. Alim, like leaves, thin layers, so, right, in dough. And it depends what you're making. If you're making baklava, you're making burekas, you're making egg rolls, right? You will need different kinds of batsek, of dough, to have the consistency that you want. You know what rogalach are? Yeah, rogalach. Rogalach, of course, yeah. Yeah, a long time. Anyway, rogalach. Yeah, with cinnamon. Anyway, different kinds of dough, right? Different kinds of dough. So here too, you have, sometimes that's just the way the teva, the nature works, that the heat or the melicha or whatever it is will only go so far, either kedei netilah or kedei klipa. So, the most lenient shita, the most lenient opinion will be that melicha, salting, can only go as far as klipa. Regardless, there's no distinction with shaman and kochosh even. Not even a distinction between if the meat, whether it's one of the meats or both of the meat, are fatty. Because once we introduce fatty meat, what did we say? When did we introduce fatty meat? Many difference, especially in tzli. We say fatty meat, combine that with the heat, and it travels farther. It gives it more strength. It gives it more of a drive. It's able to travel further. It has fat. So you have heat and you have fat, and it's all over the place. Versus just lean meat, no fat, so how much does it go? How much will it affect?
What was the...
That's Isur Dovuk. Isur Dovuk. Yeah, Isur Dovuk, the Ramah has a whole, shtickle, as we say in Yiddish. He has a whole discussion on that, why it's different. Why it's different? Because the Isur is Davuk, it's attached to it. Okay, we'll maybe get to that again. So, that we need to know, keep in mind, that that's the most lenient shita. Melicha, regardless of any situation, just keep in mind, there is a shita that holds kedei klipa. Klipa, yes. Not just hadacha. Hadacha is, you don't need anything. There is a concept called hadacha. Just wash it out, rinse it out, nothing happened. Right? You have a little bit of milk in the fridge. It fell onto the chicken in the fridge. It's not the end of the world. Chicken is cold. The milk is cold. Just wash off the chicken and you rinse it off. There's the chicken is not going to be bolea. There's nothing to be mavliya in it. There's no heat. How is it? Right? So you can rinse it off. There are certain things that you can't, how are you going to rinse it off? Even if it's cold, it got mixed in, liquid with liquid. Then you're stuck. You can't filter it out. Okay, that's a separate problem. But usually, if some things are cold, it's the easiest to deal with. Even if you use a knife, by the way. Even if you use a knife. You use a dairy knife to cut a piece of cold meat. Did anything happen? Now, knife is called duchka de sakin. Knife, you see the term duchka, or the dochak, or the sakin, cutting through. Knife is sharp also. So it can, through the sharpness, do something to the meat, right? But that's only especially a problem if the knife or the kli is ben yomo. For those of you who learned Halacha Basar v'chalav, you come across that a lot. The ben yomo or enyo ben yomo, it makes a big difference in Halacha Isur Beheter too. Was this keli used today? If it's not used today, then the tam that is in the walls of the keli is pagum, right? It's effective. So if it's effective, it's not such a big deal. And most kelim, we have a klal, rov kelim enam bnei yoman. You most likely didn't use it this morning. You have so many kelim in the house. Who said this morning, Dafka? You used it yesterday. Well, 24 hours went by, at least. So therefore, whenever you're dealing with a kli, a potential eno ben yomo, you have less of a problem. But if the basar is roteach, the piece is hot, remember that? You have that in Hilchot Basar v'chalav. What happens if it is hot, right? And you have, depending on the heat, it's clearly shown or not. In Hilchot Taaruvot, we talked about the issue of taking a piece of meat from a kli rishon and putting it into a kli. Is it still hot or not? Well, it's still hot. I can taste it. So what's the question? The question is the davar gush is not liquid. Liquid you can take into a kli shani. It cools off from the, not as hot. Put something into a bowl of soup that's not as hot as in the original pot, it makes a big difference. But a davar gush that you transfer into a kli shani, will it be a kli shani? Some say no. It retains the original heat and it's a problem. Nevertheless, I think it was the Bach that said, add that heat together with duchka de sakina, and you have a little bit of a problem here, right? Because you have, nevertheless, the heat of kli rishon, which in basar b'chalav, that's the question. Using a dairy knife to cut a piece of meat that is hot, roteach from kli rishon, it makes it asura, right? There's a difference. In other words, what do you do to the knife in that case? There's a difference whether in a knife. It's interesting. In Basar v'chalav, just quickly through it. In Tzadik Bet it was, I believe. Tzadik Dalet. You had a difference. Maybe in Tzadik. You had a difference. Yeah, Tzadik Dalet. Whether the knife. It's an interesting halacha just about knives. That sometimes you don't need hagala, you just stick it in the ground. Do you remember learning something like that? Huh? No, you stick it in the ground a few times. Hard ground, yes. So kol hachaticha asura, imem b'shishim. If you cut keneged makom hasakin. But if it's not a ben yomo, or if you don't know, then all that's asur is kedei klipa and the sakin. You just put it into the nitzar bakarka. Right? So that's an important distinction between Eino Ben Yomo and Ben Yomo. You have a combination of Sakin and Basar Roteach. But anyway, there are various scenarios, as we said, we have a situation where something can become Asur because of the penetration of the Isser through heat, or in other ways. We learned about Kavush, right? You're making something, there's something which is more spicy, can make it more intense, can bring out the time even more. Exactly. And we learned about kavush, which something is immersed in water and liquid for over 24 hours. And if it's not liquid, just plain liquid, it's vinegar, sear, brine, then even within a few minutes, it's so strong that piece of meat or whatever food item that you're sticking into that liquid mixture that is very hot or spicy, it may absorb much quicker. And there's no heat, but that's enough. That method of kavush, as it's called in Hebrew, is strong enough to penetrate. Makes no difference if it's soft meat, hard meat. It absorbs. Now, of course, we're not experts. We don't know how much is absorbed. We just say, asur. We're not going to use a microscope. Okay, let's figure out how much exactly penetrated. You're not going to deal with that. Okay, we just say it's asur. And that's what we're dealing with. A lot of times we're dealing with humrot. And one of the humrot in this last portion of Siman Kuf Hei is the Ramaz humrah. It's not only his humrah, is that we do not distinguish between basar kahush and basar shamen, fatty meat or lean meat. The difference being that lean meat would be less of a problem because it would only be kedei klipa in Melicha, and Basar Shamen would be Kedei Shishim, according to almost everyone, except for that one Shita. So since we don't always know, is this Basar Shamen or Basar Kachush? What kind of a meat does it have? How lean is the fat? Maybe the fat is fat, but it's not such a fatty fat. There is something like that. Then, we don't know, so we know the whole thing is as we're Mahmir. But wait a minute, how could you be Mahmir? What if we're talking about 650 pounds of meat? Right? We're making a whole, you're just going to throw out the whole thing? That is why you have the concept in Halacha Isur Ve'Heter of Efsed Merubeh or Efsed Mu'at. Sometimes it's not that the Halacha is wishy-washy. Sometimes people have this problem when they learn Halacha. What's the story here? Either is it this or is it that? There is something called Efsed Merubeh. There is room for that. We have to go by certain guidelines. That's what Halacha means. Lalechet. By certain guidelines. We're not malachim. We're only human. And there's only so much we could know. And we have to go right or left.
And cost an attribute.
Yeah, of course, cost is an attribute. Torah chassa. The rabbi said, Torah chassa al mamonam shel Israel. Good point. Torah is concerned about Jewish finances. Financial losses, I should say. Right? It's going to be a big financial loss. Then we apply the more lenient opinion. Not that his opinion is not valid, but now it is. No, it is a valid opinion, but we don't use it. We're strict. But there are times that we don't need to be so strict. It's not that this...
That's very important. Yeah. In other words, you can't say, this is too expensive for non-kosher meat.
Exactly. We have to go by the halacha.
Halacha tells us how far we can go and
sure.
when we can
There's
go.
always a halacha, how far we can go, when to go, and so forth. Yeah, it's very, very clear. In Europe, they had to use certain leniencies to determine whether basar was taref or not taref. It was a whole cow. We're talking about tremendous financial loss, especially if this poor guy, that was his only cow.
What's going to happen if somebody has a fire in the garden? The house could burn in Shabbos. So what are you going to do? Take water and as a mamon?
Yeah, that's Halacha Shabbat. No, in Halacha Shabbat, mamon does not come into play. Halacha Shabbat, a financial loss does not mean that you can desecrate the Shabbat. But b'chaz v'shalom pikuach nefesh can doche Shabbat, right? And therefore, since a fire in today's cities is a pikuach nefesh because it could easily affect the neighboring homes, then you are allowed to call the fire department. You don't wait for a goy to do, because if a goy were to do it on his own, you just let him.
If you live, let's say, yourself in somewhere, and you have your house, and there's a fire, so it's not allowed to use.
No, you know what you do then? You know what you do? You say kaparat avonot. That's all you can do. It's an atonement. What can it? Yeah. When cities, towns, and villages burned down in those days, especially, it was a big loss. But people understood. Whoever, at least if they had a tzaddik in town to explain to them, they understood that they must correct something. It's not mikre. There's no mikriyut in Judaism. There's no such a thing coincidence. We had El Niño and La Niña weather patterns, and the weather is dry, and it's global warming, and because of that we have a lot of fires. No, there's no such thing. A fire is one of the puraniyot. It's one of disasters that the rabbis tell us comes out and destroys for certain averot. Floods for other reasons, fires for other reasons, earthquakes for other reasons. Anyway, that's a different topic. So, just quickly, in case I was not clear enough, in Halacha test, when the Mechaber introduces to us the whole concept of Melicha Sheno Nechal Machmas Mocho, that it's very, very salty, he says, Dino keroteach maflit, that it is maflit le'esor k'dei klipa. So initially he tells us the basic halacha of Melicha. Then he differentiates by Shum and Agid u'knoik shebo, and there's various opinions as to why there's a little bit of a difference in Shum and Agid. We're talking about the sciatic nerve. He says, by them, take the netila, take a little bit more than the klipa. There's different opinions and explanations why there he's a little bit stricter. The whole Shuman Agid is a Rabbanan anyway. Shuman Agid is also Rabbanan. We're talking about the sciatic nerve, which we cannot eat. That's the Raisa. But the Shuman, around it, that's the whole thing is there. So you can be more lenient with that Shuman than you would with other chelim. In this case, he's more strict, whether it's klipa or netila, and that's why there's different explanations as to why did he have to be more strict. Okay, because it's shuman agid. It is a little fatty. Okay, but anyway, he does tell us if it's chelev mamesh, so he's already going not like the most lenient sheet. He's already telling us that if we're talking about chelev mamesh, real fat, that is on a piece of meat. You want to eat that piece of meat? It was salted by mistake with the chelev on it. you're going to need 60 to cancel it out. You still have to remove the chelev, but if you want to make that piece of meat mutter, you're going to have 60 to cancel out the chelev. Why? Chelev is fatty, so he's holding like the opinion that holds that something that is very fatty, Melicha will penetrate further, right? And everybody pretty much holds like that, except for that one shita that says Melicha is always keklipa. So if it's chelev mamash, you need 60. Now, what about other meat being salted together with this iser meat? Basar who shomen, then if the heter meat is shomen, even if the iser meat all it has is shuman nagid, you need 60 kedelevatloi. So now the mechaber is bringing us back the shita that he holds with sli, that heter mefatem leisur. Okay. Here he did not. By the way, here he has not told us yet what's salty here, because we're assuming everything is being salted together. One is salted, the other one is. Everything is being salted together. All he tells us over here is heter mefatem leisur, which he told us in sli. What does that mean? Is that even though the fat is in the heter, and fat is not in the isur, if the fat is in the isur, there's no question asked. Just like we saw by chelev. No, even if the heter is fat and the isur is kachush, lean meat, the heter is able, the fat in the heter can make the isur fatty to a point where the isur will be able to penetrate the heter even beyond the kedei kalipa or the tila. Okay? So that's called heter mefatem leisur. The Bachaber holds like that. Not everybody holds of this, especially not in Melicha. Right? The Marshal, or the Rashba, I forget which one it is, no, Marshal, said, I can understand you saying that by Sli. I can understand you saying that by Sli, but why say that by Melicha? Who's to say that it's exactly the same thing? So not everybody goes along with the Mechaber, the heter, mefatem leisur, if the heter is the one that's fatty. It has to be that the isur is fatty in order to have shishim. So if you don't have fat in the isur, you're not going to have shishim, unless, of course, everything is being salted together, perhaps. We'll see. So that's what the Mechaber explained to us in Halacha test, that heter mefatem leisur. And even if you have shishim, he added the little chumrah. It's a chumrah, we said, that you need kedei netilas mokum from the place of contact. Even though you have shishim, great, you're safe. Wherever they were contact, wherever they were touching, you will need to take off a netila, because that isur is like still be'ain. It's like still there. There's still something there. It is not gone. By bishul, it's pretty much gone. You have shishim, it didn't stick. It cooked all over. It moved all over. It's diluted. Gone. Even they were touching potatoes and cholent and everything. It's gone. The steam and everything dilutes it, makes it disappear. Here, by tzli, by melicha, it doesn't disappear. They seem to hold, most of them at least, that you need to take off, even though you had shishim and the heter is mutter, you'll take off from the heter kedin netilas mokam. Or at least a klipa, he says. Right.
He did that hill.
Right.
And I don't know there was toast made everything mutter.
Yeah.
So how does he deal with him? And you still have to take off.
Right, but remember, by melicha and by tzli, the point of contact, you still have to take off. Only the point of contact.
So do you need both 60 and
a kedei netila from that? Only from that point, only where it touched. Yeah.
Because you're not sure that it actually spread.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. We know, but we know over there it's.
It may have spread. So
but you have shishim, right?
But the kula to say for sure spread, and therefore it's not concentrated in one location. So you need to right.
Right. Exactly. Now, if the isur, just before we go on to the reading it from the inside, if the isur is tofel, not salty, and the heter is maluach, the Shulchan Aruch will hold like the Rashba, that there's no koch in the melach to bring out the tam from the tofel, right? We said before the melach can only be mavliya. That is why in those situations where the isur is not salty and the heter is maluach, we have quite a few rishonim, quite a few at least shitas that hold that sagi behadocha, all you need is hadocha. Rinse it off. The heter is the one that's salty. There was a piece of meat that was sitting next to it, right? That was also, that was straight by mistake, it was there. All you needed hadocha. The Ramah is going to hold like the Ran. Remember we spoke about that it depends on how you interpret the Gemara. He's going to hold like the Ran, that the Isra Tofel, nevertheless, by contact, nirtach b'makom hamaga. In other words, it becomes hot where they touch. There's salt. There's salt. They're touching. The heter is salty. The iser is not salty. So what? The salt is in between. You see. So the Ran says that's not what the Gemara meant. The Gemara meant only when they're not touching, but there's a flow between. There's sear tram between them. Yeah, you could be lenient, but when they're actually touching, there's salt in between them. What do I care who's the one that's salty? The salt is affecting or touching the head, the iser too. You follow me? So the Ramah is going to hold like that shita, like the Ran, that even if the heter is the one that's salty and the iser is tafel, it's at least a kedei klipa. Forget about shaman right now. It's not going to make a difference. So keep that in mind. The Ramah is going to follow that shita. So therefore, how does the mechaber learn? Wait a minute, there's salt. The fact is there is salt. What difference does it make if they're both touching? There's salt. So I think the Rashba is going to explain, because mechaber holds like the Rashba in this. Even though there's salt, it's not salty enough. Okay, there is salt. It's a fact. There's salt. But if the heter is salty and the iser is not salty, it's not that spot where they're touching is not hot enough. It's not salty enough for it to be able to affect the iser and draw from it. See, we're going back to the point we mentioned last time. I mean, the more salt, the hotter it is. Right? So here there's not enough salt. It won't pull. It will never pull. In this case, it for sure will pull. One of them is salted, the other one is not. It cannot pull. It can only be mavliya. So if the iser one is the one that's salty, good. It will be mavliya. But if the heter is a salty one, it will not be fleet. It will not draw. But it's salt. It's not salty enough on that spot. The Rashba will learn. The Mechaber learns, right? It's not salty enough that it will make the whole thing salty. Because once the whole thing becomes salty, then of course the whole thing is one unit. The whole thing is hot, very, very hot, much hotter than if one of them is salty. Okay, the Mechaber Shita was that you cannot be Metzaref, you cannot combine all the pieces. He's concerned that the Chelev does not travel from one piece to another perhaps, even though they're all touching. Right? This is a little bit of a more complex halacha. And if you have the time, you can go into the Shach and Taz on this. There's a question on the Mechaber. It's a little bit of complex because there's machlokes rishonim on whether the chelev may travel or may not travel from one piece to another. We have a lot of pieces of meat being salted at the same time, and that would be great because the more pieces you have, the better are the chances that between all of them you can mevato. You'll have shishim keneged the chelev. There's a piece of meat that had chelev there. It happens to be an isur davuk. And the Mechaber, by the way, said that when it's a chelev davuk bo, that's where you need kedei klipa, right? But all the other chatichas shenimluchu yachad, you will need 60 in each one of them to be mevata the chelev. Okay, so he briefly touches on the chelev that it's davukbo. He doesn't talk about isur davukbo. He was just telling us that in the piece of chelev that you had perhaps 60, you also need kedei netila. But he says everything else. As far as the halacha concerning all the other chatichas that are being salted at the same time, just remember, I have some news to tell you. He says they're not mitzvah levatal chelev, because he holds in chelev mefapeh mechaticha lechaticha below roitev. It's a certain shita. It's right that holds that we're concerned. Chelev does not travel from one to another, perhaps, and therefore each one has to have kedei shish to mevatal the chelev. Now, is a shishin kedei mevatal just the chelev? Or is the shishim kemevatal the chaticha, the whole chaticha that has chayim? So we said, based on the way the Ramah learns, that we're talking about shishim mevatal the whole chaticha that has chayim, because it's a form of chanan. A form of chanan. It's not a real chanan, it's a form of chanan. It's like it's a disudovok of sorts. So therefore, it's boilea more, and you need against the whole chaticha. But if you had the piece of chelev apart, if you have chelev sitting around, then you would only need against the chelev, obviously. You wouldn't need shishin. Sitting around. All you need is that is. Yeah. Right. If you see it, depending on when you see it. Yeah. Okay. Then we spoke about bito beroiv. There is a certain leniency, and you do have an opportunity occasionally to get out of it easily. You know that just one piece was touching it, 2 pieces, as long as it was not the majority. The majority didn't touch. The majority didn't touch. Now you just don't know which piece. You could say, well, it's batal beroiv. The pieces that may have touched or did touch are batal beroiv the chatichas. There is such a thing as batal beroiv. And that would apply over here. Even now, the chiddush was that even if it's chaticha ruya leskabed, which is no vital beroiv, right? Remember chaticha ruya leskabed, it's a nice sized meat, but this is an isur balua. Chaylev is an isur balua. It's not an isur machmas atzmoi, and therefore the chaticha ruya leskabed does not apply over here. So that's a very interesting diuk, an important halacha, that you're having a piece of meat that was touching it, but the rest were not touching it. I know for sure they were not. It's important that I know for sure. I know for sure. Then it's Batal Beroy, because I don't know which one it is. Okay, the Ramah talked a little bit about the Chumrah and the Chula. The Chumrah that we're not, in other words, it's a Chumrah that we don't distinguish between Kochush and Shaman, and that's what we always need Shishim. But nevertheless, here there would be also Kula sometimes. In the case where you will be mitzaref, he holds you can be mitzaref all of them. If they're all touching, or even though one is touching one another, you can mitzaref all of them to cancel out the shishin. Oh, wow, it's a big chiddush for the Ramah. So, but he says, you know why? In the end, we do rely on the Rav's sheet. Melicha only asks kedei klipa. We don't use that. We don't hold like him, but we use that.
That's the only way you can do that.
That's the only way you can do that. In other words, there is. And there is, the shita of whether it does or not travel between piece and to another piece is also machlekes, as it is. You can have a lot of fakes over here if you really want to. If you really want to analyze the situation, there may be some room. I saw a whole discussion about various types of sveka that may apply in some of these halakhot. But anyway, we don't have that much time to go through. There's so much, that we would be sitting on a few sifim for a whole week and really take it apart. But
it's not so bad.
Yeah, but it's important just to keep in mind the basics. The basics really is, we have certain machloket, we have various opinions and various shitot. Sometimes they both come from different mekoros. Sometimes it's a different way of interpreting the Gemara, right? Sometimes things are not so clear. It's like sleep, but it's not like sleep. We hold Melicha only goes klipa, doesn't go like a kedei netila. So it's a determination, a decision that was made based on more or less the mitziut, the actuality, the reality of what they determine. How far does it really go? Fatty meat apparently can make a difference, and that is why the majority do want to be machmir. And then it comes along the Ramah and says, "Hey, okay, now I have another chumrah. I don't know the difference between kochash and shaban." So me'ikar din, there's a machlokes between the shach and taz. Really, it's a difference of opinion on how to learn the Ramah. Does the Ramah really hold me'ikar din? That you need that the shishim is the din when you have chaylev, or is it only a chumrah? That you need shishim by shaman. Is it only a chumrah? That itself is a chumrah? No, he actually holds that that's the ikar din. Because right now he's going to make a kula over here. He's going to combine a kula over here. So there's a different way of learning. If you go into the shach and taz, you will see there's a different way of learning. What is the Ramah talking about? It's a little bit vague on how he's mitzaref or why he's mitzaref the heter of the Rav's shita that Melicha only goes to Tlipa. But anyway, it's an important leniency, very important leniency. In case, you have this kind of a problem. You won't run into it, most likely, in who knows how many years. It just doesn't happen in your kitchen, in your home. But if you're dealing with Hilchas Melicha, and there's a lot of meat, and one of them was straight by accident, it was not removed on time. It has the stamp that shows it's straight. Today they have stamps. What is it doing over here? It should have been thrown out. It should have been given to the guy. Well, it was salted altogether. You have a question, you have a problem. Remember, we talked about other issues too in Melicha that I don't want to review right now because we discussed it. As of when does it become asur? As of when does it pose a problem? Right away after a minute I discovered it. Remember that? There's questions in Melicha of how salty, how much salt, how much time. Till when does the Melicha affect the piece of meat? What about after half an hour? Is the melech still strong? How about after a couple hours? After a couple days? So it all depends. We talked about two kinds of melicha. One to draw out blood. There's a shita that holds. Once it's drawn out the blood, it lost its strength. And the son that said, however, at the very least, melicha that is not to draw out blood, it's just to preserve, continues to have koach for a while. Okay, it continues to have koach for a while, but as of when? Let's say it goes on for a day, but as of when? From the first moment you salted it? Or only after, as I think the Mechaber holds, after it has reached the point of Reseya, which is after at least 8. So this could make a difference. Don't put it here, throw it out. No, you caught it on time. But according to those that say, within a couple minutes, it's a goner, it's a problem. Then you have to say, okay, I'm going to be machmer in the piece that was touching it only. Well, what about all the other pieces? Well, they may have been touching it too. They're all fatty and they're all touching and, well, no, what do we do now? Shishim, shaman, well, you have the rabbi. It only goes so far. And at least between everyone, if you have enough against the chelev, So this is what you have to think about when you're dealing with this kind of situations. Okay. Anyway, it's mashma from the Achron that you can be mehakal, but at least we have some meruba, like the mechaber itself, in the case of the Isur is tofel. Okay, the Isur is tofel, and the heter is the one that's maluach, even though he wanted to be machmir, like the Ran.
But those were two conditions, and the heter is the one.
Right. No, that's a different situation. I'm talking about
But there's only.
I'm talking about that's
it's fatty.
Fatty.
So it's two conditions, fatty as well.
Right. Because that otherwise it's not such a problem. Yeah. Well, at least, some would say that at least it would be a kedei klipa. Yeah, but the mechaber says adacha, right. So regardless of whether it's shaman or not, there would be at least a kedei klipa in some situation. Okay. The next halacha, real quickly, was the din of tatar govar. Also, machlokes, the mechaber holds that there's a din of tatar govar. Not only he learns, he takes it from certain rishonim that hold, Rashba, that there is a din of tatar govar by Melicha too. It makes a big difference. In other words, he explains. The first chiluk he explains is like this: when did I say that the Melicha poses a problem? When the Isra and Heter are both salty. Or at least the Isra is the one that's salty, but not if the Heter is the one that's salty, right? And the Isra is maluach, because then it's only hadacha. Then there were most of the yesh oisrim. Now, that was his explanation for the problem caused or brought about by Melicha. His distinction, however, between kochosh and shaman, he says, I want to quantify that or qualify that was only meant that shaman would make a difference if you have a din of tatar govar, which means that the Isra was sitting at the bottom. If the Isra is sitting at the bottom, then it would apply. So in other words, what we said by Isra Meliach and Heter Tofel, even if the Isra by itself is Meliach and the Heter is Tofel, that if the Heter is shaman, that it would be Mefatem, is until, in other words, unless you have Shishim, is dafka when the Isra Meliach is at the bottom. But if the Heter is Tofel, is the bottom, and the Isra Meliach is up, is Lemala, even if the Isra is shaman, but it's on top, it doesn't have that much koach. Right? Only kedei klipa. Now, what's interesting about this, there's a shach over here that claims, says basically, that really, heter mefatem le'isa should only work even according to the mechaber, even though it's a big kasha. The Kudas Sakefet asks from the shach, how do you say that? It's mashma from Hilchas Melicha differently. Shach wants to learn in the mechaber that the only way you will say heter mefatem le'isa, this fatty heter, is if the heter is also salty. If the heter is not salty, don't say heter mefatem le'isur. But anyway, it's not much like that from the mechaber in Hilchos Melicha. Over there, it doesn't make a difference. Heter mefatem, in other words, over there, even if the heter is not salty, but it was fatty, it causes problems.
Here, by
Hilchos Melicha. Here,
it causes problems.
Here it does. But the question is, does the heter have to be salty? Because here it doesn't say that.
Right. So in both cases, if it's fatty, it causes problems. But over there, only if it's also salty besides being fatty.
No, the Shach wants to say that in the Mechaber.
But he brings the Mechaber.
Yeah, but that's because, yeah. Here Okay, so he's talking just about the din of tatar gover. But the din about heter mefatem le'isur in general, the Shach wants to learn, even though it's not mashma like that from the Mechaber, that he requires also that the heter be salty.
Is it depends if it's very fatty or something?
That's something else, yeah. So anyway, the din of tatar gover is an important din, very important din. We learned about it in heat. It's shaykh in Hilchas Shabbos too. It's just that's the way it works. That heat at the bottom is more powerful if the heat is on top. Okay, we learned the Ramah. We learned the scenario of Zeh Letzad Zeh. They're both hot Nikirisha, they're both Asur. If only one of them is hot, not the other one, it all depends if it's Basar or Chalav or not, but nevertheless, if only one is hot, they're next to each other, it's only Kedei Klipa. It's not going to be Asur completely. Side by side is not as bad as one sitting on top of the other. Especially when the one that's hot is at the bottom. That's troubling. I mean, the one that's in the bottom, if that's the one that's hot, in this case, that's the one that's salty, it's going to be much more powerful than if it's sitting on top. The Rama says, no, we don't say Tatah Gover. He holds like Tosfos. The various shittas that do not agree that there's a din of Tatah Gover by Hilchas Melicha. And therefore, it's both Lekula and the Chumrah. In other words, it's not going to be even a Klipa. In other words, whenever we don't concern ourselves, with the problem, let's say the heter is the one that's Maluach, and it's the one that's sitting on top, it's not going to be Kedei Klipa. It's not going to be, right? In other words, in that scenario. But obviously, if they're both being salted, it makes no difference. As the Shach explains, when you say there's no din Tatah Gover by Melicha, what are you saying? That it makes no difference how they're sitting. If they're both salty, or if at least the Isser is salty, at least, right? We said always at least the Isser is salty, but kosher and the two are salty. It makes no difference the position that they are on. They will always be Asr. Now,
so it's a bigger chumrah.
No. Yes, in this case it's a bigger chumrah.
So
it's a kula.
So when the Mechaber says Tatah Gover, he's into a kula comparison.
Yes, a kula. But so they asked the question of the Mechaber. Well, wait a minute. Okay, you did say in Hilchas Basar b'Cholav and in Hilchas Melicha, the question over there was. Let me see if I remember here. That in other words, it's always going to be a Kedei Klipa, regardless. That the Shach brings down this question. In Hilchas Melicha and also Basar b'Cholav, there's no difference. It's always a Kedei Klipa. So why over here he's telling us an nafkamina of Tatah Gover? And over there he doesn't say that Tatah Gover makes so much of a difference. So the Shach, I think the Shach explains here that here he's making a big nafkamina because he was introducing to us when it's a davar shaman, it's going to make a difference. That's only if it's sitting at the bottom. That's the nafkamina. Heter shaman ve'isur tofel, but the heter is mefatam le'isur. That's only if the isur is in the bottom. If the Isser is in the bottom, it could happen. If the heter is going to be at the bottom, the heter will always, the Talgavar, the heter will have the koach, heter being shaman, and it will cool off, or not allow the Isser to penetrate. The Shach says, what do you mean? The Talgavar only works with heat, does not work with salt. With heat, you can say it cools off, it intensifies, it heats up, it's stronger. By heat, you have this concept of Talgavar, just like you have this concept of klisheni. But by Melicha, but Mechaber seems to be saying that there is this din, and for the Mechaber it becomes a kula. It becomes a kula in general, it becomes a kula in specific terms if we're talking about that which is shaman, because he said, I only said that, it's a big chiddush, but Melicha, only if the Isra is on the bottom. If the heter is the bone that's in the bottom, guess what? The Togavar, the heter will not be mefat in the Isra. It's at the bottom. So the Isser has to be in the bottom for the heter to be Mefat and Isser. So this, again, just a quick review of what we learned last time. Both next to each other, when both are next to each other, they will only become Asr if they're both salty. If the Isser is Maluach, even if the Isser is Shoman, if they're next to each other, it's only going to be, even if it's Shoman, it's going to be Kedei Klipa. Heter Maluach, Isser, Shoman, only Behadacha. So next to each other is not as bad on top.
Now, according to those who do not hold Tatah Gover,
right,
what's the din of other?
Yeah, that's the halacha l'maisa. That's what they would hold. Kedei klipa.
But
the only way they would both be usher, right? Both completely usher, not both. I mean, the heter would become usher is if they're both salty. Very interesting point. Yeah, next to each other, it's a very similar din. Remember, that's why I introduced earlier. I reminded you of the din of heat. Of next to each other, Ramaz din of two pieces of meat.
What I don't understand is we said the Chaber into the Kula with Tatar.
Right.
So those that don't hold by Tatah Gover,
right,
they certainly agree with the Mechaber that even if there is a case of Tatah Gover, it will be a chumrah case.
Right.
Only they don't require as a condition that it be tatagavar. They
Right.
would always say the chumrah.
They would always say the chumrah case
So
like
that should be when they're next to each other as well.
Apparently not.
So they have to be on top of each other, but they don't care which one is
Exactly.
on
It
top
makes
of
no
each other.
exactly. That's what the Shach says. Yeah, apparently. Right. That's
but
the
they
way.
don't care which one's on top of the
Right. That's the way I learned the Shach.
Side by side.
יש חולקים ואומרים זה מליחה אין חילוק, אלא בין הוא למעלה או למטה, לעולם המליח מבליע בתופל, ואינו בולע ממנו.
But why?
Okay.
But it's a good point. I thought about the same thing. But what's the difference?
Yeah, got it.
But therefore, I told you about the tzli. The Ramos is very interesting that if two pieces of meat are close to each other, adjacent to each other, and the two are hot, they become us. The head becomes us. If only one of them is hot, it doesn't. It doesn't, according to the Ramah.
Not even
Right?
Kedei Klipa.
Only Kedei Klipa.
Yes, Kedei Klipa.
Kedei Klipa, yes.
If one of them is
Kedei Klipa,
wrong,
yeah, but not
one of them
completely
is
also.
wrong.
The Rabbanan. But the Rabbanan?
What? No, Meikar Adin.
Meikar Adin.
Sure, Meikar Adin. Right? So Kedei Klipa. So wait a minute. What happened? Why just because they're close to each other? But that's also, remember, we learned over there they didn't have Tatar Govar too.
Right.
Apparently there is but just over there, Tatar Govar, Meikar Adin, is at the Meikar Bola, it's going to be also Kedei Klipa, the hot one is on top.
Right.
And so it is if the two are next to each other, even though there are, I think the Marsha holds that they're both, that it's, I think it's even if one of them is hot, especially by Basar B'Cholav, he's Mechalek by Basar B'Cholav, the one that's hot, it's also Kedei Klipa, the one that's cold is completely Aser, I think he says.
Oh.
Yeah, the one that's cold. But anyway, that's the Marshal says that. I think everybody else does not go along with that. But that's interesting that over there they're close to each other. So that's the way
touching.
They're touching. So we have to learn that over here. Just what? It really is not a big nafkamina. If you say we're not mechalep in kochosh and shaman, if you're not mechalep in kochosh and shaman, right? You have this additional problem of whether is it a kedei klipa or kedei shishim, according to the Ramah. In other words, but still, it was
going to say shaman.
Right, it's still going to make a difference if they're sitting on top or if they're next to each other. Apparently, if they're next to each other, the only way they can become completely asu is they both are salted together.
If I recall correctly,
What was interesting is that it made a difference if they're both, even though we're machmir, that the Israel alone being salty is enough. That's as far as if they're sitting on top of each other. Apparently, that it's mavliya, right? If the heter is the one that's salty, it won't have koach to be maflet. That we know, we agree, right?
Also smoking as well.
What is that?
So smoking is
Smoking?
Smoking.
Yeah, smoking is another halacha that eventually we'll talk about. Smoking, smearing together, and so on, yeah.
that came up within that we are not experts and therefore, but the Ramah also says unless we're sure it's lead.
Yeah.
So if we're not experts and we always have to assume that it's shaman, how are we then, in the case that we're really sure that it's lead? When do we have this?
Yeah, that was a Ramah.
I understand.
There are certain
practically
cases.
speaking, if I have
When
to
it's an isur shelo shayach bo shamnunis at all.
Lo shayach.
Lo shayach bo
What would be an
shamnunis.
example for that? No,
Chometz and Pesach. We learned.
Chometz and Pesach.
Yeah.
Because there's no.
Right, yeah. Okay, but anyway, I just want to.
So cheesecake would be wrong.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah. Anyway,
It's cold when it's touched.
okay, let's just finish up over here. The last few halachas, interesting halachas. Gvinos shenasu betfusei of the kochavim.
Where are you?
The last three seifim of Kuf Hey. Gvinos shenasu betfusei of the kochavim. Cheese that was made in the forms. You know what a form is? A tfus. That you make cookies, you make cake. So they made the cheese in a tfus of oiv de kochavim, of goyim. That is aser. Afa pishanim lechu betoichem utorim. Even what?
Is it because of stunky?
No. So we're making the cheese shenasu betfuse of the afa pishanim lechu betoichem utorim. It's all salty, right? It has salt. There's no heat involved here, right? Mutorim. I'm just going to continue, then I will explain. Im nimlach heter b'shar kli isur. You took any heter, not necessarily cheese, and you put it in another kli isur. Nimlach heter. In other words, you're salting the piece of meat for whatever reason in a kli isur. Instead of your own kelim, you borrow the goy's kelim, the neighbor's kelim. Even if it has no holes. In other words, it's not going to go anywhere. The ein meliach keroseach, he explains the halacha here. Ein meliach keroseach kol kach so much lehaflit. Right? We said minakeli. We said meliach is strong enough to be mavliya. It's not strong enough to be maflit minakeli. even though there is one shita that does hold that it is maflit. It happens to be, I think, the Rabbi here too. Most Rishonim hold Melicha can only be mavliya. And can be, by the way, the Gemara, it's mashra from the Gemara that it can be mavliya in the keli. The keli becomes asur. But this asur of this keli that is tarfus, that you were being moleach in it, the Melicha will not take out the tam of the kelim. Now remember before, we said, we learned the halacha of tatah gova b'kelim. There are some that hold that there is tatah gova b'kelim. The keli is hot. You put a piece of, meat, chicken, rice, whatever, into the keli that was asur, that was treif, that was ben yomer, that was hot, there was no liquid involved. It will draw out, right? It will draw out because we said a keli is different than a tambalua. With a tambalua, to draw out a tambalua, you need roitev, you need liquid.
Isur balua.
Isur balua, right.
In a clean, it doesn't affect, this is affect actually the stuff that you eat, and the milk actually was falling on the, why?
No, they're two different situations. The milk dropping on the piece of chicken or meat, they both are cold. If they both are cold, there's no bliot. Nothing is being absorbed. The kli, right now, the question is, what is the question what are we discussing now? We're discussing now Melicha. And Melicha is hot. So the question, we do know, everybody agrees that Melicha has the strength to be mavliya into something else perhaps. Maybe even a keli, as it's mashal from the Gemara, even into a keli. But does it have the koch to be maflit, to draw out? We said no. And especially, or at least, also even in a keli. That's how the Ramah explains over here, that even though you use the treif keli here by mistake, not lechatchila, shouldn't do lechatchila, we'll see why. There's several reasons why you shouldn't do it. Even though it's not a problem, why can't you do it lechatchila? We'll see soon in a minute. Okay? It's not a problem. Go ahead. Borrow keli. No, we don't do it for But in case you did it, we saw it's not also because it's not maflit. Rak shakli, as long as the kli is noki vein isu dovuk bo. Okay, so he says you should be matmer anyway. Now, so he says, no, I'm sorry, I skipped. I'm reading in the wrong Ramah. He goes on to the next halacha. Melach or tavlin, spices, salt, shem be'ka'ara shel basar, mutnan litem b'chalav. Salt or spices, cumin, pepper, that is in a fleishike dish. You're allowed to take it from there, it's been there, and put it in the milchike dish, milchike plate. What do we do today? Separate salt shakers for fleishik, separate salt shakers for milk. It's not a problem, he says.
Why do we do
We're machmer. These are all chumras. So in the Ramah he explains, the salt and the pepper or spices were in a kli isur me'achar shem yevation, since they're dry. It's like similar to the halacha from before. Einam boilim in a kli, they will not absorb from the kli. Raksha kli hu noki, as long as the kli is noki. Vein isur dovuk bo, there's no remnants of any isur there. Not to use it, of course. What is he saying? Similar to the previous halacha, salt, spices, this hot stuff will not absorb. There's no heat involved except for their own little heat. Will not absorb from the flavor that is absorbed, the isur balua that is in this kelim of goy. Don't do it lechatchila, but if you did, it's not awesome. Okay, now, why shouldn't you do it lechatchila? This, by the way, this halach is taken from Toysus that compares this to toher, the sugi of toher meliach and tome tofel. The tome is the one that's tofel. The toher is the clean one is the one that's meliach. It will not become asur. In other words, as we said before, the isur one has to be the one that's maluach. So here, it's a keli. It's completely dry. It's clean. It's not going to pose a problem. Why shouldn't you do it lechatchila? I saw various explanations. The makor of lechatchila is taken from the Mordechai. The Mordechai says, "Harchek min haki'ur ve'adomelo." Always stay away from something which is ugly, from something that it doesn't seem right. Stay away from things like that. Harchek min haki'ur, the rabbis tell us. Stay away from anything that is ugly, suspicious, doesn't look right. Just stay away from it. It's not asur. Stay away from it. Some things are not asur, but they don't look right. There's another expression that's called naval b'reshut Torah. You can be a naval, a disgusting person, with permission of the Torah. That's when you gorge on food. Come on. It's kosher food, you say. Yeah, but you're overdoing it. Things that are not right, are not proper, stay away from. So the Mordechai says this is not right, it doesn't look good. Using a treif keli, even though there's no blias here, right? That's one explanation. Second explanation I saw is the Gra. That the concern over here lechatchila is that because we are concerned with the Rabbi's only shita. He's the only shita. that there's a Melicha for Kelim Lehaflet. He's the only one that holds. It's interesting, he's the one that is lenient by Melicha, that is Kedei Klipa. Here he's Machmer, that there is Melicha by Kelim to be Maflet. Rashach says that you will always require Hadacha. Since you may forget to do Hadacha, or Hadacha may not be Shayach here, if it's spices, then therefore Lechatchila don't do it. As the Ran says, also Lechatchila because you may forget to be Madiach. Okay, the last halacha, interesting halacha, and we're familiar with it a little bit from the past. Melicha balu midam. You have salt that has absorbed blood. How did it absorb blood? You used it to draw out blood from a piece of chicken. Kigobi melichas basar. By mistake, you took this salt to spice up the soup. V'notnuhu b'kdeira. You put it in a pot. Or shenotnu b'kdeira basar maluach below hadacha. Or you took the same piece of meat that was salted, but you forgot to be madiach. After you salt piece of meat, you have to rinse out bloody salt. You forgot, and you threw it into the pot. So melecha b'lo midam, kigon melichas basar, v'notnuhu b'kdeira. They put it into the pot. Oshenosu b'kdeira basar maluach. They put the actual basar maluach, the salty piece of meat, below hadacha. So im yesh samach keneged hamelach mutar. If you have shishin keneged hamelach, you need shishin hamelach, right? It has blood. You don't know how much blood. You need shishin keneged hamelach. It's a form of chanan, right? Im yesh samach keneged hamelach mutar. Now, wait a minute. The Ramah says that's not so simple. The melach is a davar noisin tam. What do we learn about something that gives off tam? I feel be'elef lobato. You can feel the taste of the salt. Remember that?
Sure,
Famous. Oh, exactly. Even though the salt will continue to give flavor, since the salt is not the one that's also machmas atzmoi, eating itself is not also. Because of that, the kol mokum she'ena isu, we learned a famous rule. Kol mokum she'ena isu yochel leilech sham, ena nesa oisu yosim ina oisu. Wherever the oiser cannot go, the nesar cannot go any further. So what's the oyster here? The dam. It will not go beyond shishim. So why should the nesar be more chomer than the oyster? Just because it gives us salt, flavor, right? So there's also an additional point over here that we don't say chanan b'meliach.
The Ramah holds like that?
Yeah, at least by Hefzer Meruba. We don't say chanan. I saw this that we don't say chanan. Yeah. Yeah. Hefzer Meruba, we don't say chanan b'melicha. Because this is based on the Ramos by Isur Davuk. The Ramah by Isur Davuk, when you know for sure, the Pri Megadim explains this, that the Ramah was not machmir by Melicha, by Davuk, only if you have a chashash that piece was salted by itself. But if from the very beginning you know that it was salted together with everything else, that you're not being machmir, because we're mitzvah the shita of the Ravya, Melicha is not says more than Klipa, and the Pri Megadim brings down the Behefzer Meruba, you can be Mekel. Shach says that by Hefzer Meruba you don't see chanan b'melicha. So either way, it would not be a problem over here. Because here the concern was the salt, but the salt is not an isur machmas atzma. The salt is an isur balua. With which one?
With the question of the...
Right, there's various kashas over here. But that's why we said that by Hilchas Melicha you can be makel, at least by Hefzer Meruba we're makel, that there's no chanan. Which is a very interesting nekuda. But it's based, most likely, on that leniency that we have, that we were able to be mitzvah the shita of the Ravya, that Melicha only goes kedei kalipa. So if you ever need that leniency to be mitzvah of that heter, you can rely on that, no problem. Okay, I think we'll stop over here, and Mr. Hashem, after Shavuos, we'll come back. Siman Kuvav. Yeah. Bittul B'Shishim.
By the way, we just finished...
Okay.